the stories of Brisco and Bradshaw. I would be Bradshaw. That would be your Chickasaw native, your Chickasaw Hall of Famer, Oklahoma's favorite son, Mr. Gerald Brisco. And we've got the treat of treats. When you talk about great families in wrestling history, one of the greatest names in wrestling history for almost 100 years. We have got one of the gentlemen that is a part of that dynasty and a big part, Mr. David Crockett. David, welcome to the show.
John, thank you so much. Jerry, it's good to see you and talk to you. I mean, really, God, I was getting a little deep in here when you was talking about me. But hey.
Man, David, it's so good. We go so far back. I mean, over 50 years. You realize that we've been friends for over 50 years. I drove into that North Carolina, Charlotte, North Carolina, and old beat up Pontiac Grand Prix with the vinyl top. While I was driving out there to Charlotte, my brother owned a body shop down in Denton, Texas, and it's Texas work, but he put one of those vinyl tops on my.
God bless Texas. God bless Texas.
On my Grand Prix, so I looked like I had some money, driving in there. About 15 miles out of Oklahoma, I'm going through a windstorm. All of a sudden, I hear this rip. And all of a sudden, back in the rearview mirror, I see this panel flapping in the breeze. My damn vinyl roof that my brother just put on had blown off in this damn storm. So now I had to stop, find me a canopy under this storm and rip. I had to rip my damn vinyl top off. I was so pissed off. My brother had big ink spots on it where it hadn't dried yet, or glue spots on there. So I drove to Carolina and I old beat up a Grand Prix there. And man, did you guys ever change my life down there? Your dad goes down and in my books as one of the greatest guys I ever had any association with. And your entire family, your mom, over there in my kitchen, I still have a recipe, David, that has handwritten Mrs. Crockett's homemade coconut cake. Remember that? It was a 3-day process. And I used to go over Sunday dinners at your house, you remember, with you and the brothers. And I really like that coconut cake. She sat down one afternoon and wrote that recipe. I still got it in one of my wife's recipe books over there in the counter there.
Well, you think about that. At that time, we didn't wrestle on Sunday.
No, we're off. That's where I could come to Sunday dinner at the Crockett's, man.
That's right. Yeah. Or that go out to the river. To the lake house out there. But I mean, Lord, that was a fun time.
Mr. Crockett Sr. must have known you pretty well because he wouldn't let David Crockett move in with you, right?
I lived in it. It wasn't me. I think it was the atmosphere. It was the environment of those apartments I chose to move in.
No, from what I heard, he said you cannot move in with Gerald Brisco.
Well, I don't know. David, help me out here.
Well, matter of fact, I think I was wrestling at that time or getting ready to. He wanted somebody in the family to, know a bit about wrestling. And, I got my ass kicked quite a few times, come to think of it.
David Finley.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, yeah. Damn, I was stretched quite a lot. Yeah. The apartments there. How many guys were there?
There were a bunch of us living over there. And you got to picture Charlotte 50 years ago at the time, right, Dave? There weren't a lot of apartment buildings out there. I mean, and this was in a section of town that was just being built up, and it was a party apartment. So I'd lived it. And you can help me out with this. What was the old Tyron Hotel or something downtown there, or where those guys used to stay at?
Someone used to stay at the Mecklenburg Hotel.
Mecklenburg. It was like $5 a night, John. So you can imagine the quality of the hotel. Yeah. And I just got out of school, man, and I want to live someplace where there's young people. I mean, that Mecklenburg is all the old timers. So me and a couple of Crockett brothers, we went out looking for apartments. We found this lake apartment, brand new complex. Had this lake that was a swimming pool.
Gorgeous.
That was like second to none. It was the biggest swimming pool in Charlotte at the time. That's where I'm going to live. They had a gym in there. They had all the modern conveniences that these apartments have today.
Yeah,
So-
a big lake, had a big lake there, and
Yeah,
this
big
fountain,
fountain
blowing
coming
the
out
water
of it,
up.
change colored, all this stuff. That's where I got the idea for my music lights. And David saw my music lights in my apartment a few times.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
you remember.
Well,
My
remembering
my
the memory's
disco
different
lights.
story. Now, trying to remember some of those times, Lord. That's when what? Boone's Farm and Appleberry wine. Oh, that stuff is nasty.
Strawberry Hill, man.
Yeah. Oh man, alive.
We wouldn't buy it by the bottle, John. We bought it by the case.
Yep.
So, Jerry,
And
for
we
those
really-
that haven't noticed before, you had a disco lights in your apartment.
Yeah.
Oh, you should have seen Dance. You haven't seen now that is something that would be a classic. That Jerry's out there, doing the disco. Oh yeah. All of I tell you, it's amazing what alcohol does to us.
Yeah. So
Wait
anyway,
a minute. Mr. Crockett would not let David live with you, correct?
He wouldn't let David get an apartment here in the same complex.
I got. What happened to me?
Yeah. You went. There you go.
There we go.
No. You.
Like we said, nothing like getting old men on a damn conference
Yeah.
call.
I thought maybe you didn't pay your power bill or something.
Well, then I've been waiting on my last payoff from the Crockett family.
Oh, you too.
Talking about
you
getting
too.
John, too. There, I will put the heat on John. I brought that up so John can jump in there. John, tell the story there.
I'll send a bill.
So anyway, I moved into these swanky apartments, which I thought was swanky coming from Oklahoma, as long as it had a kitchen in it and indoor plumbing. It was swanky.
I listened to Lake Apartments, and it was top dollar at that time. It really was. Like you said, it was brand new, and the best thing about it was the hottest club in town was within walking distance, so you didn't have to drive. You could always walk back to your apartment.
There you got a little bit of my thinking there, John. I was being safe at that time. I didn't want to drink and drive, so I just moved within walking
I never
distance.
said you weren't smart, Mr. Brisco. I said you were crazy.
That too. But anyway, David, Mr. Crockett wanted one of his boys to get into business so they could experience it in the ring. So,
that's right. And I was the only one that was not married at that time.
Yeah.
Jackie was married, Jimmy was married, and I just was the only smart one, because I'm still married to the lady that, Jimmy and Jackie both were divorced, twice? I think it is, both of them. But, and Francis.
That we know of.
Yeah. And that's talking about kids there. Jackie is, well, never mind about Jackie, but we'll skip that. But, I was the only one. Matter of fact, October, we will celebrate our 50th anniversary.
Oh,
Wow. Congratulations.
Yeah. Not many of us can say that.
No.
Wow. And for her to put up with me.
Yeah,
Lord.
for her to put up all those years. So anyway,
both you guys know the traveling that we did, and it's you're always gone, even though that, okay, you come back that night, but you're coming back at 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning. You leave at 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. You might have to go to Richmond, Norfolk, Roanoke with Pete Apostolou, or Charleston, Henry Marcus.
Oh, in deep pockets.
Yeah, or the Murnix up in Raleigh.
Yeah. Well, what a cast of characters your dad had working for. But anyway, so Dave was going to be broke into business so he could kind of learn the inside of the business from inside the ring there. And so they got broke in, but he was looking for a place to stay. So. And the Jim Crockett Sr. was a very wise man. So he had heard about the apartments I moved in. It was a little wild and fast.
With the
Carolina
disco
Bible Belt with the disco lights and everything. David said, I'm going to move in out there with Brisco. No, you're not. Yeah, you're not moving in there. I'll fire you, but I'm your son. I'll still fire you.
That's right.
So needless to say, he got one of those swanky tower apartments downtown somewhere like that.
Yeah, well, believe it or not, well, let's see, where did I? For a long time, I didn't get one. Then finally, yeah, believe it or not, it was a small apartment. I had 4 other guys in there with me.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. That was something else.
So anyway, we were rolling along. Yeah, I had, but David, and Jimmy and Jackie we'd all jump in that Pontiac. Sometimes we'd make the road trips and the questions asked. I mean, these kids, they really wanted to know the business. Their dad knew the business from a business standpoint and was still to this day, in my estimation, one of the greatest promoters that ever wrote down a name and a booking book. But what a great time we had back in those days, man. We had
it was
a
fun.
great time. And the cast of characters around us, the Skull Murphys, the Brute Bernard. I mean, you can go back, David. Who's some of the first wrestlers you remember in the business?
The French Angel,
Gorgeous
George.
Yeah.
Gorgeous George. Then, well, of course, George Becker and Bobby Becker. Gorgeous George.
I never knew Bobby Becker.
Yeah, well, he died early in life. George and Bobby were a tag team. And then when Bobby passed away, Johnny Weaver sort of came in, and then George, because George for so many years was the booker.
Yeah.
I mean, so that's why it became such a tag team territory because.
Well, I was going to ask you. That was going to be my next question. Why do you think that out of all the territories, Carolina was known to be a tag team territory? How did your dad plan that? Was it through George and Bobby?
Well, it was. Well, let's back up a little bit. That he started in Bristol, Virginia, Tennessee, and with boxing. He was doing boxing, ran into the boxing wrestling. Then he started promoting wrestling, and really wanted to live in Greensboro. That's where he and Mom wanted to live, but Charlotte and Mecklenburg County required the promoter to live in Mecklenburg County to promote boxing and wrestling. So that's why they ended up here, in Charlotte. But man alive, and two, Johnny Heidemann. I don't know if you remember him.
Heidemann and what was Johnny's partner, Frank Marconi. Heidemann.
Yeah, and George Two-Ton Harris.
George Two-Ton.
The
Bolos, some of the most famous heel tag teams. The Bolos, the Assassins.
Yeah.
Wow, right there out of Carolina. They were established. That's where they were established, was in Carolina. And also that's where the big lawsuit took place over the probably one of the first big lawsuits, John, in our business took place there in Carolina with who was it? Jody and Tom? Was it Jody or Assassin at the time, or was it Al Lovelock?
You talking about the IWA and?
No, I'm talking about when Al Lovelock sued. I think he sued your dad and Tom Ernesto for infringement wearing a mask, assassin mask.
Yeah, but well, it didn't stop him.
He sued him for wearing his gimmick.
Yeah, wearing his gimmick because they were tag team partners somewhere else. Go ahead, Jackie. David.
I think that Tom came to us from California, and as he would say later, that he came on a bus and left in a Cadillac. But his persona with that mask on was very evil. Evil, and he always talked above everyone. He had the perfect diction, and and even though you couldn't see his face, the eye contact, the camera loved his expressions and loved his pitch and tone.
Now this is a guy in a mask, and they're loving his expressions, John. And he got those expressions through his eyes and through the shape of his mouth, right? Right.
Yes, that is correct. And then later you add Jody Hamilton as one of the assassins in the Infernos, and J.C. Dykes was the
J.C.
manager.
Dykes,
Yeah.
General Homer Odell was wow. It did take hours to discuss and break down Homer Odell.
Oh, man, it sure would. And I think he visited every jail in North, South Carolina, and Virginia.
Why?
Why? Homer was a big mouth. He didn't know when to keep his mouth shut. Plus, he always drank.
Always.
And the abusive the language that he would come out and just people. And he had this way of spitting as he talked to people on purpose, of course. And he just, as he's talking, he's just spitting all over them. And just pissing everybody off. But yeah, Homer was Homer. And I think at one point, I think he was driving a cab. Wow.
You mentioned one guy showing up in a bus, leaving in a Cadillac. Carolina was always known for good paydays. Was your dad known as well for good paydays? Because everything I've seen on your dad on the internet, when I was reading about it today, trying to get ready for the show, is how much respect people had for your father. It's amazing. There's, it's hard on the internet not to find something bad about somebody. There's nothing bad about your dad. It's all very positive.
He had good payoffs. He definitely had good pay. Matter of fact, for the big shows, he would overpay. He said, it was, you just needed to do that because, you look at the, let's call it the preliminary guys that, it's their job to get the crowd going. It's a group project there. If the preliminary mid-card matches are horrible, it's harder for the main events to get the crowd going. So yeah, he did well. And there were a lot of wrestlers very loyal to him. Matter of fact, Johnny Heideman mentioned to me one time we were riding, and he was talking about Jungle Boy was a wrestler that came in. He had this big furry hair and he had the bone in the nose and so forth. But he would, Johnny was let's call it the weak sister. It was a tag team. So they don't beat Jungle Boy, they beat Johnny. And guys were pushing Johnny to go back and bitch to Dad. And so he did. And Dad said, and Johnny was telling me, Dad said, all right, Johnny, I want you to do something. Tomorrow I want you to come in here early and I want you to go in that closet right there. And I want you to stay in there until I tell you to come out. And they sort of made it known that Johnny was quitting. He was pissed off about, being the weak sister in the Jungle Boy thing. And all these guys came in the next day wanting Johnny's position. The same guys that were egging him on to bitch about the pay and being the job guy, they wanted his job. And so after they all left, and he said, all right, Johnny, come out. And he said, I rest my case. And, and Johnny went, I understand. So, Wally Ducey. Now, another guy, Wally Ducey. Now, Wally was he was a shooter. Matter of fact,
he badass. The Ducey brother was badass. Yeah,
he wrestled. Matter of fact, he started wrestling carnivals 10 years ago. And, being you come out and, beat me in 5 minutes or whatever. And that's why he had that thumb all twisted back. But yeah, and what a gentleman too.
How was Gorgeous George? You say you brought in Gorgeous George. Did he come in very often?
Yes, he did. I mean, there's only so much you can do with Gorgeous George, because he was and he was a singles. So he was singles. He has his valet and he had the bug sprayer pumping the perfume, and then the golden bobby pins, he'd throw out. Yeah, I hated him as a kid.
Did he have as much heat there in Carolina as he did out in Los Angeles?
Oh, yes. People hate him. I mean, he would. I look at Ric Flair, and there's some of Gorgeous George and some of his struts and robes.
Right.
it's there.
You mentioned you hated Gordon's George. I know as a youth, how familiar was you and did your dad make you guys of the business? Were you guys always around the business? Were you smartened up, as they say, to the business, and how?
He never smartened us up. Never, ever. It was when I started, and matter of fact, he didn't ask me to wrestle. He had Rip Hawk ask me. And it was, there's an easy way and a hard way in wrestling. And we'd rather do it the easy way. And that was it. I mean, I took tickets, I sold programs, I set up wrestling rings, you name it, and I did it. But I was never allowed in the dressing room while he was alive. None of us were. None of us. I mean, that's how protective he was of the business. The kayfabe was kayfabe, and he. Mm-mm.
Well, I do know on Sundays when I was invited to come out to Sunday dinner that Rip Hawk would be there or Thunderbolt Patterson would be there. And did you notice back in those days when your dad and your mom would open their doors up that these guys that supposedly hated each other were sitting down at a cordial Sunday dinner?
Right, and and it was sort of like what they say about Las Vegas: what happens here stays here.
Yeah.
And he was very adamant about that. He just said, because, shoot, Mr. Moto, I'm telling you, Mr. Moto, I think he had 7 kids. And Mr. Moto and P.Y. Chong, and they came out there a lot to the river place. And I remember him teaching his kids to swim. He'd just take them, throw them in the water and said, swim. And you're going, oh, shit. These kids can't swim. And all of a sudden, they're dog paddling or whatever. Yeah. But yeah, he never, ever smarted us up. It was, and you look at it and come on, it's hard on the body. I mean, it was, and people that are watching this, people call it fake. There's, it's not fake. When you slam somebody on the mat. You try to position yourself that you can spread your weight out and cushion the blow. But hey, you're being dropped from 4 feet or, can you imagine off the top turnbuckle landing? Jerry, John, it's, it takes a toll. It takes a toll on your body. And I know that they talk about, people, hitting or, you really slap. Nah, I've been accused of being a little snug. But
really,
yeah, I took after you.
You had a good role model there.
Yeah. Hey, I tell you what, John, Jack and Jerry, you watch them and they get that gleam in their eye and you go, oh shit. They're going to stretch somebody. I don't know who it's going to be, but I'm going to vacate right now because I don't want it to be me.
I mean, anybody that knows the Briscoes knows that gleam.
Oh,
anybody
light up like a Christmas tree. It's
my God!
Oh God! I can't wait. I'm gonna tie you in knots.
Yeah, they just get very happy. Jerry kind of gets sideways a little bit and starts coming toward you. And this is either in the ring or in the after the hours in the bar.
Right. Yeah. Oh,
it
definitely
could be anywhere. But when you see that gleam, you know that it's time to leave.
Those poor marks. Oh, how stupid they were.
David, I got
marks. Wait a minute. I saw that gleam get in his eye one time on Jerry's 60th birthday in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and it was poor Eric Bischoff.
Oh, I love it.
He drug Eric Bischoff all over a bar. They were both in their suits, and the place was packed. And he drug Bischoff all over this bar in Tulsa, Oklahoma on his 60th birthday. And Bischoff
Really?
tapped, and that's where the phrase "tap like you mean it" comes out, because Brisco wouldn't let him tap lightly. He didn't like the way he tapped.
Damn, I like that. I like that. I'm gonna have to mention it. I'm supposed to be at Conrad Thompson's event later in June, boys' weekend or something, guys' weekend, and Eric is supposed to be there.
Oh,
Bischoff.
Eric's
So
the best. And what happened is me and John Cena and Bruce Pritchard had talked Bischoff into a shoot with Jerry. And finally, Bischoff realizes he's backed in a corner. And to his credit, he tried to leg dive Jerry. So, he realized he's got no chance at this point.
Well, now Eric, he always said that he was such a good karate person. I guess that didn't work, right?
No, sir. Let's jump off of me and let's go back to your dad. Because your dad was so special. I mean, one of the most fascinating and funny stories I ever heard is a lot of the promoters back in the old days would bring bears in, bring different animals into the territory. Your dad refused to bring a bear in. And why is that? Do you remember that story that I'm getting to?
Well, because he brought it one time. He brought
it one time at a TV studio, right? And the bear broke out.
WB.
You want to tell John that story, or listeners that story? It's great.
All right, yeah. He brought a bear, and the bear got in the ring, and I forget who he was wrestling.
But I think it was Johnny Holloman, from what I remember.
Might have been, yeah. And bit his little finger off.
Yeah.
And then the bear the trainer or the person who's supposed to take care of the bear knocked him down and started out the ring. Well, I have never, and I was there with believe it or not, I was a Cub Scout at that time. And I was there at the Cub Scout, and we're trying to scramble, but I'm watching Dad because he always sat in the corner in the studio. He was the first one out the studio. I mean, I have never seen him move that fast in my life.
Now, John, Mr. Crockett is a very large man, over 300 pound plus. Here's like I was told to me, embellish, and David can kind of get the embellishment out. But, they've always brought in the wrestling bear. Well, Mr. Crockett, like David said, sat right back by where the guys come in and out, off to the side in a chair. He sat there the entire show. So the bear goes out and he's having this match, and I think it's Johnny Hanneman. The bear gets through the muzzle. Johnny gets his finger stuck in the muzzle, and the bear just snips it off, kind of spits it out. Then he wants a treat now. So because when the bear does it, the trainer would always give him a treat. Well, Mr. Crockett is sitting back there, and there's a trail of treats. So the bear jumps out of the ring wanting this treat, and the trainer turns, and when the trainer turns, the bear sees Mr. Crockett sitting back there in the back, and he sees a light, and he takes off towards the exit there. Well, Mr. Crockett, of course, thinks that damn big-ass bear is coming. He gets up, and all 400 pounds of him is running out of the arena. Running out of the TV. This is live TV going on.
Live TV?
Back in those days, it was live TV.
The bear bit off a man's finger on live TV?
Live TV, man.
Yeah.
And he chased Mr. Crockett out the damn arena. And right then and there was never another bear in the Carolinas.
That's right. It was crazy.
So if the bear would have got out the door, he'd have been loose.
Yeah.
Yes. Still had the chain on, in the collar, but yeah, he was loose. He was loose.
But where they did those TV studios was the woods. There's probably a lot of bears out in those damn woods.
Wow. But yeah. So, yeah, besides, Dad also promoted, the Harlem Globetrotters. We had 72 dates a year on those.
Did you guys almost purchase the Globetrotters at one time because you had such a good relationship with them?
No, they wanted us to promote for them everywhere. And just couldn't do it.
Right.
But then, he and Abe Saperstein, now think about this. They had a handshake deal as far as what the deal was going to be. No paper, a handshake, and each other's word. You think you can do that today?
Hmm.
You know,
No way.
yeah. And back then, a person's word meant an awful lot. You know, in wrestling and entertainment business, you know, it just was.
Well,
Yeah,
your dad ever did everything by a handshake, and you
Yeah.
could look in the man's eyes, and you knew that handshake was good. I mean, the respect that your father had was. I mean, you go through this business, and we were both fortunate where we're both still around, but we both known a lot of different promoters in this business. There are very, very few. You can count on 3 or 4 fingers the amount of guys that had the respect that your dad did. And
yeah, you know, it's true. And I tried to carry it over. You know, when Turner brought us,
Yeah.
you know, man, that was a buzzsaw.
well, you guys you did get it. And that was the thing. Your dad was so respected and so well received by everybody. He passed that on to all 3 of you guys. I mean, you got 3 brothers, Jimmy, David, and Jackie, and I, you know, through all this businesses, I've known a lot of different families that's been in this business, but I've never known a family that had overall respect. Even your sister Frances was highly respected in this business.
Yeah. Now Frances, you know, she had the ball club,
Right.
the baseball team, the Charlotte O's, a AA team. Several years, she was voted by Sports Illustrated as
Right.
minor league manager of the year.
Right.
And
Tell
for
us a
a
little bit
while-
about how did that baseball organization start, and then how did you guys get into minor league ball?
It was Bob Quincy, who used to be the sports editor of the Charlotte Observer. At that time, there was a lot of discussion that Charlotte was not a sports city, town, whatever you want to call it. And we had a wrestling match at the Coliseum, and Bob Quincy showed up one night, and when we were there and we were settling up, and he came in and they just started, you know, talking about it. And he said, "What do you think about sports in Charlotte? Do you think that they're right that Charlotte's not a sports town?" And we said, "Hell no." Both Jimmy and I at the same time said, "No, if you present it the right way, you know, the people are going to come." And he said, "Well," he hooked us. He already knew what he was going to do. And he said, "Well, prove it." And we looked at each other and said, what, we're doing wrestling, you know? And he said, "Well, you know, the Harlem Globetrotters, that's entertainment and some other stuff." And he said, "No, you know, what about, you know, baseball?" We looked at each other and we said, "I don't know anything about baseball." You know, Jimmy didn't either, but, you know, we said, "Yeah, it'd draw." And he said, "Well, guess what? The Minnesota Twins want to sell the ballpark. They had a ballpark here in Charlotte that was built in the 20s, and they wanted to sell. And then the baseball team, the double A baseball team in Asheville at the time, was for sale." So Jimmy and I looked at each other and said, "Damn, he knew what he was going to do to us." So we said, "Okay, if the deal is right and, you know, the things work out for it, then yeah, we could do it." And so it was my job to get the ball team here in Charlotte to renovate the ballpark. And that was one hell of a job to do. Matter of fact, the first year I had Eddie Murray, who's in the Baseball Hall of Fame. He was with us half a season and had a great time. I mean, really, at the ballpark, you know, and then at that same time, we knew that we were going to have to start producing our own television. So I did it for 1 year, and then Frances took it over, and then I created our television production. As far as we bought a TV truck from an evangelist down in Rocky Mount, North Carolina, ripped everything out of the truck and put new tape machines and stuff in. We started producing our own wrestling shows and doing interviews there at Briar Bend, you know, on Wednesdays, and ship the shows out by Thursday, and boom, we had 82 stations we syndicated to, and that was before Turner, So, yeah.
82 stations, these are all syndicated with Mid-Atlantic, wasn't Mid-Atlantic, JCP at the time, right?
Right. Yeah. But it was, the show Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling was one, Worldwide Wrestling was another. Right. We had 2 shows we bicycle around. Yeah. And a lot of the stations were not places that we would go. It was the production manager or the program manager at the station saw wrestling would get the ratings, and they'd put it before the local news. Well, if you dominate the hour, then that audience carries over into your local news. And that's what they were looking at, to win, the hour of the local news, against the other stations that they had at the time. So, we just said, you pay shipping in and out and we'll send you a tape. It was basically just a general tape. It had general interviews in it, but it's, you never know when, program manager might come back in your area. So,
And I was thinking about it. A lot of guys travel back and forth there. Go ahead, John. I'm sorry.
How did you do with the baseball team?
We did very well. As far as until the ballpark burned down, some kids, set it on fire. But then George Shen had come into Charlotte, and he had the basketball team, Charlotte Hornets. And he wanted to be the sports guru. And when the ballpark burned down, we were going to build the ballpark back. But then the city sort of stepped in and said, no, you have to build a parking deck, a 3-story parking deck. Well, we didn't do that. At that time, it was surface parking, and there was sort of warehousing around us in that area. And so people just parked, there. Games were at night or weekends, and warehouses just weren't open at that time. So it's just surface parking everywhere. And then we made a deal with the mayor and the governor of South Carolina, the mayor of Chester, South Carolina, that we were going to move the team there for 1 year while we built a ballpark at Carowinds with land that Crescent Land Timber had, which was Duke Power. And it would be half of it would be in South Carolina and half of it would be in North Carolina because of beer. You could sell beer on Sundays in North Carolina. You could not in South Carolina at that time. But the city stopped us on that too. So we sold the team, which, it's a shame. It was, my kids sort of grew up out there. Frances's kids definitely did. She had 5 kids. It was a family affair.
Yeah.
So to speak.
Speaking of the range of promotion with baseball and everything, you're doing the Harlem Globetrotters and entertainers. Who were some of the famous entertainers? I know the list, but some of that your dad promoted back at that time. It was a who's who of entertainment. I know that.
Right. He promoted, let's start with the big bands, Tommy Dorsey, Glenn Miller, all that. Then boxing, Joe Louis, Jack Dempsey, coming through North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, and the Dick Clark Caravan of Stars, Dionne Warwick, Johnny Mathis, Henry Mancini, Andy Williams, Frank Sinatra. It just goes on.
Your family had a really good close relationship, I remember, with Andy Williams too.
Yes. Some of the basketball, it went up and down the East Coast. And in a lot of cases, we used wrestling promoters in the different areas to sort of head some of that up with it. The Wards down in Georgia, in Macon, Georgia. And Augusta, Augusta that was a Sunday afternoon show,
right
there. So and then we had Ice Capades. We did that. We got out of the entertainment portion of it when Hard Rock came in and all of the drugs and everything. And the entertainers were asking for a certain year vintage of wine and certain color of M&Ms and pinball machines. And we said, forget that. You know, we don't need that. And two, I remember it was who was it? All right. Georgia on My Mind. That was
Ray Charles.
Ray Charles. He came in and he was so drugged. I mean, we had a sold out show. And you know, I was in the crowd. I was looking forward to it. And you could see them sort of have on either side of Ray Charles, holding him up, taking him in the dressing room. Dad went in there and he canceled the show. Here was a sellout show, but the guy was so stoned.
Wow.
You know, he said, no way. So he made him come back at a later date. You know, he said, I live here, he doesn't, and damn it, you know, it's my reputation. You know, so that's what, you know, the good thing about him. You know, he had principles. You know.
You mentioned boxing in the Harlem Globetrotters. Vince McMahon's grandfather, Jess McMahon, I guess, promoted the Jack Dempsey, Jack Johnson fight down in Cuba. So you guys both promoted some of the same people, your father and Vince's, I guess, grandfather, and maybe his father too. Was there a relationship between the two? Was it acrimonious? Was it good? Was it bad?
It was very good. Very Vince Sr. And my father were wonderful friends. NWA conventions. Vince went to them, you know. Yeah, I mean, it was very cordial. You know, I remember being called from a promoter in Washington, D.C., wanted talent from us. And I asked Dad, and Dad said, call Vince. So I called Vince, gave him the guy's name, and he said, I'll take care of it. I said, okay. You know, because Washington was not our area. You know, we stopped there at the river, so to speak. So, yeah. Matter of fact, Gary Jester, one thing, he did that later on. And, you know, he didn't want to expand, you know. So.
You were the one territory, it always seemed like that had a chance to go against the expansion. You guys were starting the Starrcade. You guys had the pay-per-views. Was the talk not there from your brother either that he didn't want to expand? Or what was the talk during that time when you guys are promoting Starrcade, Vince is promoting WrestleMania, and it looks like this war between the two is kind of brewing?
Well, and it was. And the thing is, we were very reluctant about it. We didn't want to work every single day and go God knows where. But you know, you had to do it to survive. You know, the thing with TBS, you know, and Vince, and matter of fact, you know, Vince and Ted did not get along. Mm-hmm. You know, right, Jerry, they did not get along, man. And so we were approached to sort of save a lawsuit, you know, from Vince and Ted suing each other. And nobody wins there. So, and we saw TBS as sort of helping us defend ourselves again, and then trying to help the other promoters see if we had just taken care of our area, and we didn't need to go to the Meadowlands. We didn't need to go to Hershey, Pennsylvania, and help Bob Backlund or Mushnick or any of those guys. We just needed, you know, and all, you know, they wanted us to send talent, bring their wrestlers on TBS and send, you know, interviews and all that, you know, and Jimmy and I totally disagreed. And so that became a big wedge between the two of us. You know, and you know, that led to our downfall. Bill Watts, that my suggestion was let Bill go belly up. And why should we take on his expenses? We did not, Jimmy and Dusty were so hot to trot to go to Dallas, the conquering son going to Dallas, and Jimmy had a new wife, and this was a way to start. And I said, you can't do this. This is not going to work. You cannot divide your company this way. It does not work. And then Bill Watts's debt, all of a sudden started to appear, paying all these stations, that he did not pay, so to speak. All those bills came due to us. That office building there in Dallas that he had the lease for, that we had to assume. And then, that Falcon jet, that was, and that really caused a lot of rift with the boys, because, who was going to be selected to ride on the jet?
Right.
I said, I really don't give a rip about the jet. I'd rather do commercial because I get points. I mean,
during this time, I mean, the guys in the back that didn't have any stake in the territories, they were all saying, Crockett's, of all the territories, you guys were so solid and so solid in your reputation. And the towns that you had were so successful, from Richmond down to Savannah and every point in between. There was no need for the Crockett's to expand, but we all knew where that talk of expansion was coming from. It was from that Texas guy, and you and your brother Jimmy, not so much, did not buy into all that stuff, because you knew what you had there locally, and you knew if you took care of those, take care of what you got in your backyard, you won't have to worry about anything else. But that vision kind of went out the window when you started going to these places like Texas.
Yeah, I mean, just the cost of flights. It doesn't matter. The jet, but you're flying commercial flights out there. It just, we bought a G1, which is a turboprop. It held 16 passengers. That, in some ways, made sense if you're going to expand. Effective range was 500 miles. You could take a whole group, all their stuff, drop them off, let them wrestle for the week, come back, pick them up. You could just do that and move around. But going to St. Louis and Philadelphia, it was like, come on, Vince, it didn't hurt Vince. And no, he countered us. He had the stage at that time, as far as nationally. Cindy, you look at his first WrestleMania, all the stars that he had, so he was getting the attention. But there again, too, with TBS and our stations, our ratings were fantastic at that time. It was unbelievable what we could do. And we basically destroyed ourselves. Really, egos got in the way of good business sense.
Right. Yeah.
That is the best thing to say. Really,
I agree with you on that.
Was going national necessary? You're saying it's not, but my question is, was it necessary to survival because of the way that TV was changing? Before USA Network, before TBS, before ESPN, you only had just your network television. You didn't have cable that was coast to coast. Well, now all of a sudden you have it. And so did that make it necessary to go national because of the way TV was changing?
No, Vince made it necessary. Come on. Until he, I can't hold anything against him. Come on, he went to East Carolina. He married a Carolina girl, so hey, come on. I mean,
I get a question. So Survivor Series. I've always heard in WWE that Survivor Series was to counter Starrcade that was going to be on Thanksgiving. And that's what I heard it from the WWE side. I want to hear it from your side. Was that what you knew as well, that Vince had kind of snuck one in there?
Yep, he snuck it in there, and it burned us, and then we went back and did a 2-hour special on TBS, and on top of one of his pay-per-views, and the cable systems went nuts because we affected him, as far as they said the buy rate, and they called Ted up and said, you can't do that anymore. So we didn't, but we, would we have gone to TBS? Not necessarily. If it wasn't for Vince, we probably wouldn't have. Most of the territories would have stayed the same.
Oh, David, I want to throw this out there. When all this was taking place, of course, my brother and I made a sell. We approached, and the bylaws of Georgia Championship Wrestling, you had to ask somebody inside the company if they were interested. We did that. Nobody. Then you had to ask an NWA member. It wasn't, but it had not an opposition. So we went to Jimmy, and Jimmy flat told us. He said, "I don't need TBS. I'm going to stay here locally." He said, "I got my territory here. It's not going to be affected by anything you guys are doing. So I'm turning down your offer there." So that was kind of the thing that you guys were looking at, taking care of your territory there,
right?
And not worried about anything. And then other influences come in. Oh, we got to go here. We got to do this, and that might have been the biggest mistake, only mistake that the Crockett family made during their years of promotion was buying into that global expansion deal.
Oh yes, yeah. If anything, if we'd stayed east of the Mississippi, we would have been fine. I mean, you look at the Fullers, and the Jarretts, in Tennessee and Alabama, they were strong, and two, those cities or towns were not, let's say, big enough. I mean, on Vince's radar, they were not as big as they are today. Let's put it that way.
Right.
They're major cities today, just like Charlotte is a major city.
Right.
But back then, your biggest cities and the biggest population was sitting up north.
Right.
And Vince was looking at TV ratings.
Even Atlanta wasn't considered a major metropolitan area at that time. It was still a growing city.
Right. That's true. Hindsight's 2020. And
David, take us back to probably one of the most tragic days that was in the history of your territory. And of course, you were on the airplane ride to over to where was Wilmington or somewhere like that.
Yeah.
Tell us, set that up for us, and kind of.
All right.
A lot of people don't remember that, and a lot of people sure hadn't ever heard the story.
All right. It was a Sunday because Wilmington was in the summertime on a Sunday. We probably ran it maybe once a month then, and it was put on by the Wilmington Soccer Association at the football stadium. Jimmy was supposed to be on that plane. Jimmy was sick. He asked me to go. I said, okay, I'll go. Eddie Godwin was the promoter for the association down there. I figured I could get some seafood. Come on.
Come on.
There are other motives to go. Yeah. So I said, sure. And so it was a Cessna 402 Navajo. It was a 6-passenger or 6-person plane. You had the pilot, co-pilot behind him, and then it was pilot Johnny Valentine, Tim Woods, Mr. Wrestling, Ric Flair, Bob Bruggers. Yeah, and I mentioned Tim Woods was in front of me. And so we took off. It was a 45-minute flight. And the pilot, Eddie Fargus, I think that was his name, who was a Vietnam vet helicopter pilot.
I'd flown with Eddie a lot.
Pardon?
I had flown with Eddie a lot. He was a Vietnam pilot.
Yeah. So when we got close to Wilmington, say around Lumberton, North Carolina, Florence, one of the engines started sputtering. So he feathered, I want to say, the right engine. There's a lot of this that I had a pretty horrible concussion, which some I don't remember, some I don't, so to speak, I've been told. All right. Which to this day, I don't know why we didn't land in Lumberton or Florence. Florence had an airport. They had commercial traffic. So I don't know. So we went on the way down there. And as we were approaching, going over the Cape Fear River, the other engine started to sputter. And I'm going, oh my God. I was thinking of Gary Hart and the guys that crashed.
Right.
And here my son Mark was 2 weeks old. Wow. And I'm thinking about that. And so I'm trying to, I'm leaning forward in my seat, trying to.
Was the pilot making announcements that we're in trouble, or?
Oh yeah. I mean, once that engine feathered on the right-hand side, it was a very quiet plane. Uh-huh. Very quiet. I mean, no one said a word. And when the left one over the Cape Fear started, I mean, it just, and I was just hoping, God, please don't crash in Cape Fear River, because I've got all the beef in front of me, so to speak. And there's a door there, and there's no way I'll get that. There was Bob Bruggers was right here. There was a luggage compartment door back there. And I said, maybe, just maybe, I might do that. I mean, and then I'm thinking, well, I don't want to get the breath knocked out of me and sort of get knocked out. And so I'm trying to control my breathing, and I bent over, sort of in the crash position. And the last thing I remember was I heard a noise and saw a light beeping on the console, the pilot. And that's the last thing I remember. Now, my father-in-law, who is was a pilot, he's passed away. He said that beeping noise and the light was probably as he got over Cape Fear and on the approach to a runway directed, they had to go over the county prison camp, which had a water tower. And he was coming too close to the water tower, according to the FAA report, that he tried to pull up. Well, that stalled it. And he said, that was the buzzer and that was the light you heard, that the stall warning. And that's when it nosedived into the railroad embankment.
So it nosedived from that point.
Yeah, and it hit going 80 some miles an hour. You look at the speedometer that's stuck. And so I was asking Valentine several years later, because he went through so many things trying to walk, because, his spine was severed along with Bob Bruggers. Bob wasn't as bad, but he had to have metal rods in his back to support his back. That I said, I don't remember. And and John Valentine said, David, be happy that you don't remember. He said, we were the last ones they took out of the plane. He said he didn't realize that his spine was severed. He thought that his legs were trapped by metal or something. He couldn't get out. But he said the fuel smell and just everything. He just, he said, we're going to burn up or something. But it was, I guess, because of maybe my head injury, because I went through the seat and hit Tim Woods in the back and cracked right along his spine, his ribs. And I was split from here to here, down, shattered several teeth up here. They were just dangling it up, but they couldn't tell because there were so many facial injuries. And the concussion, and I dislocated my shoulder, and they didn't know about that until they gave me crutches to leave because I broke my ankle too. And they tried to give me crutches, but my right arm wasn't working. They said, "Oh, his shoulder's dislocated." So, they gave me drugs and popped that back in, I guess. But that's, and Tim, talking about kayfabe, Tim, being the professional that he was, he left the hospital that night so nobody would know that he was there. So the press and people would not get him because he had those cracked ribs, but he was mobile and the rest of us weren't. Rick had, some back injuries, Bruggers was there, and then John. So, yeah.
Wow.
That was something else.
At what point did you know you're going to crash? Did the pilot announce it? Did anybody say anything in the plane that when you did?
I don't remember anything past seeing that light and the buzzer. I don't.
Before that, you said you had started to assume crash position. You're worried about.
Yeah.
Did you know for sure?
He didn't say anything. Just everybody knew once that left engine started sputtering. You're not going to go much further.
Right.
The only thing you wanted was to get past the water because the Cape Fear at that time, a lot of shipping goes through there. So, container ship. So it's deep water. So you're not going. It's not crashing in shallow water.
You're not going to wade out of that river.
No. Yeah. So no.
How long a recovery was it for you, David?
My wife said, because there again, I was a little nuts. She said it took over 6 months. 6 months before she noticed that I was getting some of my memory back. She still accuses me every now and then about.
It's a convenient excuse now. Well, honey, I can't remember my head.
That's right. But
so, of course, you wasn't at the show or anything. But did the show go on that night?
I don't know.
Yeah, you don't remember.
I don't remember. I don't know.
Wow.
How did people know to come get you? Did the pilot call and say we're crashing, or people?
The pilot. I'm sure issued a Mayday. That the planes. I'm flying on one engine. Need a runway, and they directed him to that runway, which is not being used very much. The thing is, if he hadn't have stalled, we would have landed, that, let's say 100 yards or 50 yards there before a runway. You've got that dirt area. That's where we would have been. We could have made it. But the stall was you go and we hit the railroad bank.
Did the plane ever burn? You talk about Johnny smelled gas and all that stuff.
No, never did. Never did.
You had no gas in it, right? Or was it?
Yeah, well, they had fumes, but it never burned. Yeah. Never burned. No, never did. Thank goodness.
Did you have much fear of getting on a plane after that? Life depends on getting on planes.
Right. Even to this day, but the first flight I took was from Charlotte to Raleigh. That was my test flight. Mm-hmm. And I was white-knuckled the whole time. And that time it was a Piedmont Airlines. And the flight attendant even came by and she said, asked me if I was all right. And Jimmy was behind me. And so Jimmy explained to her, because I wasn't talking. That was probably one of the longest flights I'd ever been on. It probably takes 30 minutes.
30-minute flight.
Yeah. But yeah, to this day, though, I can, I got to the point I can fall asleep even before the plane backs up. But a smell or a sound will trigger me.
Wow.
And I start asking questions, and I'm always right. I'm always right that there is something, I'll say there's a smell here that's not supposed to be here, or sound, and I get pretty obnoxious about, I know it's here. I know it. What is this? And I keep asking, and finally I get, either an answer that satisfies me or there's something wrong and they need to turn around. So, yeah.
Do you ever try to explain to your fellow passengers that you're not crazy? You've been in a plane crash before that almost killed everybody, and so that's why you're nervous?
Well, no, I told them, if the person sitting next to me is nervous, I said, don't worry. As long as I'm here, you're not going to crash, because I've already crashed. I'm not going to crash again. I said, it's just.
We were in people talk about all the time this flight where we ended up emergency landing in Russia. We're flying, I think, to Seoul, Korea, and Flair was on that flight. And Flair famously said, "This is the worst flight I've ever been on." Everybody's like, "Oh my God!" but we took solace in the fact that surely Rick won't be in 2 plane crashes, because we were coming in a bad snowstorm, and anybody who was on it will talk about that flight, about how worst flight they've ever been on. And we thought the same thing. We thought, no way Rick's in 2 plane crashes.
Yeah, no way. Golly. Too much. Hey, you talk about crash. You think about, the heir apparent to Ric Flair at the time, Magnum TA, with his crash. And that hurt us. You talk about that, he was good.
Wow.
He was good. Yeah. He was down in Florida.
Right. Yeah. He was down there. He left Florida and went to Carolina, as a matter of fact. But yeah, tell us a little bit about that. I mean, for those that don't know, Magnum TA, Terry Allen, young, handsome, good-looking athlete, was a state champion wrestler, could go any way that you wanted to go, shoot style, tough style, or working style, and he had that appeal that very few people in this business have. He just had the mass appeal not only to the young ladies, but to their boyfriends, to the parents, because he was such a nice, outstanding young man. And Crockett's had done a fantastic job of building this guy up to superstardom. And wow, one night, tell us the story.
Hey, Jerry, before you do that, we
Sure.
also have permission from Vice TV. They're about to do a couple episodes on Terry Allen, right?
That is correct.
I wanted to make sure.
Vice TV is going to air a special on Vice about Terry Allen, Magnum TA, on Wednesday, June 6th. That's Wednesday, June 6th.
And I understand
Vice
they're making
TV.
that announcement as we're speaking here, probably, and so we're getting to break the scoop for Vice TV, John and David.
And with Terry, the camera loved him. And you, both of you guys understand that if a camera doesn't like you, there's not a damn thing you can do. But the camera loved him, his persona, his speech, his face, he was so believable. And there again, the interviews were not scripted. Everything was sort of ad lib, and he just had this way. And you look at Terry too, the respect that he had for his parents and everyone. It just he was
over.
He was it.
No,
He was over.
He was the next. Whatever you want, word do you want to put there? But he was the next.
He was the next. He was the next heir apparent that could do the job for everyone. I love Rick, but Rick is Rick. Ric Flair, the Woo, and Terry Allen would, it would be like Jack Brisco, that it's so believable, that, here's an athlete that's sort of like Mr. America in a lot that, home apple pie and
everything.
Yeah, everything. And
the all-American boys, they say.
Yeah. And for him, to have that accident and what it was, he had a new Porsche that he'd never had before going down Randolph Road here in Charlotte. It was wet and he wasn't used to all that power in the back. Remember the
Right.
Porsches? And that sucker took off like a rocket. And he basically wrapped himself around a tree in the air. Now think about that. Terry shouldn't be with us. Terry should not be with us. He was in the hospital. He couldn't move a muscle. He was basically paralyzed from the neck down. Slowly but surely, finger inch by inch, and even today, he has that personnel mover that
Right.
you see.
Segway, Council Belt Segway.
Yeah, and he's a great businessman. He has a great business going with cell towers, and he had not let that injury get in his way, of life. And
He's become very successful outside of our business with the handicap as he is. The guy's a remarkable person. And
Yes,
I'm
is.
so glad I understand that you're really featured in this thing, honoring Terry, and it's unlike a lot of these other Vice TVs. It's an honoring Terry and telling him what kind of fantastic this person is, Terry Allen is.
It's not the dark side. The only dark side would be the accent.
Yeah.
Of Terry, and I think I encourage people to watch it.
Yeah,
to see what could have been.
Yeah.
It's like, God, can you imagine?
And all we can use is our imagination on what could have been. But those of us inside that knew Terry, we could visualize that so clear. I mean, this guy was the guy that would come along next to be the man, the chosen one.
Yeah, over 6 feet tall. Had the look, had
everything you need.
I mean, David is a bit of a cultural change kind of going on at the same time. No longer did the guy that was the hero wear a black hat. Rambo came out, who was kind of that dark type anti-hero that came out.
Right.
Terry was kind of that anti-hero, that one of the first he was Stone Cold before Stone Cold. Is that might be a good way to say it.
Yeah, that is a good analogy, because I look at Terry, prime example, okay, that we used to work with the Tunnies up in Canada, and we did some matches for them, I think in Detroit or somewhere, and then in Montreal. Northern people don't like babyface. Dusty Rhodes was up there. They booed him. Here's the baby face, Dusty Rhodes. Boo it. They booed the hell out. They want tough guys. They want the all-American guy. And Magnum was it. He could back it up. He didn't strut. He walked to the ring like John Wayne, I guess would be a good example. He was
great,
it's I wish that people had if you saw him wrestle, then you wouldn't forget it.
I suggest people get on YouTube and go back and watch some of his matches on YouTube. Just see how fluid this guy was. See how synced he was with everything going on in the audience.
Yeah, matter of fact, with WCW and Turner, we were hoping Goldberg at one point would have that, but we were afraid of what he would say. We didn't know. He had the physique, so to speak, but we didn't know if his voice was going to be mousy or his vocabulary was going to kill him, or what. So those quick matches, and out that 30 seconds, was, we did that for a month, and it sort of worked, but didn't work. He's not a Magnum TA. No. Even now, Terry can cut you an interview. Yeah.
David, when is this going to air on Vice?
It's going to air Wednesday, June 6th on Vice TV. And really, that's Wednesday, June 6th. I don't get anything out of this, fans. Just want to let you know. I did it because I respect Terry. I know that he deserves it. He deserves, all the accolades that we can give him. Watch it and you'll like it.
After Terry got out of the life-threatening stage of his accident there, I told my wife I got to drive to North Carolina because he had just left here. He had just left Florida, and John knows the story. We had that King of, we're lucky that something like that didn't happen before. We had a King of the Road T-shirt, which Terry still has the T-shirt today. Drinking, and without throwing up, saying who can drink the most. Terry won the shirt. We retired the shirt with Terry. So I had to get in my car.
Do you see a trend here, David? Mr. Brisco is involved as the bad influence in many, many different groups.
Of course.
Many different generations.
Well, right there's one of them I was a bad influence on. He turned out all right. But anyway, I drove to Charlotte just so I could sit there and see Terry and just tell him how I was happy that he survived that accident. But what a great guy. Still is today. Just an outstanding guy. As you said earlier when we started talking about that, he's never once let that accident take advantage of him. No. He's overcome it every time. What a man he is. So please tune in to Vice TV on June the 6th.
June 6th.
Jerry, when people ask me who would I like to have wrestled that I didn't, Magnum TA is always number one. But that guy was so freaking good. I mean, I would have loved to have been the old chicken shit heel wrestling the big tough guy in Magnum TA. That would have been...
He was snug. I can tell you that. He was snug. Oh yeah. He was definitely snug. Yeah.
Oh, you have something else coming up here, David. We got ahead. It's named after the patriarch of your family there, and really the patriarch of Mid-Atlantic wrestling there. And
that's right. And
we're all proud of there. Tell us a little bit about what you got coming up here soon.
All right, coming up Saturday, June 3rd, in Winston-Salem, we have the Jim Crockett Cup. Think about that. We started that. Remember in New Orleans?
Yeah.
We started. Oh, man, what a party that was. There'll be there again.
Do you see a trend here?
Yeah. With Crockett, the event is the event. Oh, what a great event! It's what a great party. What a great and John, I got to tell you, these guys hosted some of the greatest post parties, a big show that you ever been to in your life.
Hey, the Crockett plane is one of the most legendary modes of transportation ever. That's what they do. That's from hell on.
Yeah. Well, it's Saturday and Sunday, so that's June 3rd and 4th in Winston-Salem at the fairgrounds. Jim Crockett Cup. You're going to see the shrimp. I can't even say it now. It got me going. I've been drinking. No. Sheepherder Luke, Bobby Fulton, Ricky Morton, Ronnie Garvin. Oh man, Jimmy Garvin, Tully Blanchard. Wow. And Tommy Young is going to be there Sunday.
Wow.
Bobby Fulton mentioned that. And then Baby Doll.
Baby Doll. No mention of Briscoes. Man, I can't believe you're having the Crockett Cup without a Briscoe.
Yeah, I know it. That's a shame. You ought to come up. Yeah. And there again, this is not this is not my promotion. This,
NWA promotion. Huh?
Yeah, NWA.
You are Mr. NWA though, David.
Well, I'd like to see these guys. They wrestle like we used to wrestle, Jerry, and that it's a fast paced, snug. It's not lucha libre. We're not spending 90% of our time in the air. It's good, solid wrestling.
Well, we've had their champion on here. We've had Titus on, and we've had Billy Corrigan on, and what an outlook he has toward the business. I was so impressed.
Such a pleasure to have Billy Corrigan on. He was big fan of that guy's.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing Billy. I think he's been in Australia. He also still works in concerts. So he was over there. So I'm looking forward to seeing him. Matter of fact, it's this weekend. Wow. Yeah. 3rd and 4th. I think I better get ready. I'll be there signing autographs, kissing babies. I'm not going to run for any office, but I look forward to seeing fans and thanking them. But because for so long, after the sale to Turner, I thought that we totally screwed up. That it was a death in the family to me. Matter of fact, with the Turner thing, I have to tell you guys, and I haven't told anyone else, Jimmy and I did not talk to each other for 4 years.
Wow.
Because of that. Think about it. 4 years.
4 years. Wow.
4 years.
You guys were so tight too.
Yeah.
That's hard to believe.
But one day, it was.
How did that come? How did that come about? I mean,
Jimmy made his deal with the Turner people. And then
Jimmy made his deal with?
They gave Jimmy $1 million.
Okay.
Contract, for 5 years, $1 million. And he said, "You guys make your own." And so I was going to take the company Chapter 11. I was bound and determined. Then, you mentioned earlier my mother. And she said, "David, you can't do that." It's strange, I finally gave in, but look, I was the one that survived. I was the one at Turner, the sort of the Mikey, give it to Mikey, you'll make it work. I had to deal with Jim Hurd, Jack Petrick, a bunch of people that didn't know their ass from a hole in the ground. All the people that were, the backstabbers, you go in a meeting, they've already decided who they're going to blame before you walk in and have meetings to have meetings, until Bill Shaw, who was head of HR. No one, all right, back it up. No one, Ted bought us. That was Ted's idea. And Jerry Hogan was Ted's guy. Well, something happened and Jerry Hogan left. And he went to Home Shopping Network and he's never looked back. He just made gobs of money. All right. But Ted goes to the board of directors and say, "All right, who's going to take this company I just bought?" Nobody wanted it. Nobody wanted it. So he made Jack Petrick, because he was sort of getting ready to retire anyway. And then Jack Petrick got Jim Hurd, who used to promote or direct hockey, I think it was, or something. He was a buddy of Petrick's, and he came in and tried to rule it like a drill sergeant. Well, that's not going to work with wrestlers. That is not going to work. So he left, and then we went through everything from too many people with agendas, and the people at Turner never liked us. But we got to the point, at least I did, and the people who worked with me, was we were very proud to be hated by them. We were Ted's redheaded stepchildren and proud of it, because none of the programs that they were doing could touch us as far as ratings. We were the first ones to go digital, at the Turner network, which pissed everybody off. All the vendors that worked for me, I never signed a contract, going back to my dad. I said, as long as you do a good job, you're fine. If you don't, you're gone. If you can live with that, okay. And I made a lot of people money that way. And that was all right. But I knew I could count on them so I could go handle something else. So, yeah. And I remember Eric, you talking about Eric, when he first came in, we were in Corpus Christi, Texas. And I was in charge of everything at that time. The transportation, the lighting, sound. And I'm doing all this. This guy comes walking in. I'm Eric Bischoff, and I'm here to do the 900 line. Well, go stand over there, and I'll get to you in a minute. Yeah. But then when Bill Shaw wanted to make a change, I can't remember if it was Bill Watts, with the when he brought a gun to TBS that finally put a nail in his coffin. But Bill was looking for someone, and I put my name in the hat, and he had a conversation, and he said, David, we can't do this. I said, why? He said, what is your last name? I said, Crockett. He said, that's why we can't do it. He said, but I've got this young man, Eric Bischoff. He's got a lot of good ideas, and I want you to protect him. I want you to be, his shield and help him in any way. And I can show you the scars on my back from the knives. I totally respect Eric. He is totally different from the first day I met him. From the man he is today, and the man that he was then. Yeah, it was something else.
And David, what do you think really the tipping point was Turner was? I mean, you guys were you're doing great in ratings and everything, but what was it, just a stepchild, as you described it, that they looked at it as and didn't have any respect for the product? Do you think that's why it went by the wayside with them?
Well, with Bill Shaw there, they had the respect because Bill was an original Turner guy. He was one of the ones that started with Ted, and he was there until the Time Warner merger. And then he left to manage Ted's properties. After that, Harvey Schiller came in, and Harvey could care less about us. He said, as long as we make money, but there again, then talent started, Eric and Hogan, and, it was, I think, a undue influence. I might get a lot of shit for this, but undue influence of Hogan on Eric in some ways. There were a lot of things that they were so afraid of the dirt sheets that they would not tell us until they get to the building what they're going to do that night. Think about the shows that you've had with Vince. Can you imagine not telling anyone, any wrestlers, anybody, any agents, what's going to happen until you get to the building? How do you prepare for it? How do you, the videos and, I ended up having 13 tractor trailers on the road. Just what if, I was in Canada, and when we had a show up there, and they said, I want an ambulance. Well, no ambulance up there would do it because, it's sort of a government thing up there. So I had to buy one. I'm glad I had a company, American Express.
Yeah.
What'd you do with it after you bought it?
I gave it back to them. We weren't going to use it. It's sort of, and they gave me a little money back, but not much. But copy machines, phone lines. The phone company never got it right, so you always paid to have a person from the phone company there and another person from the copy company to make sure the copy machines that they bring because at that time you couldn't move them down the road because shaking a copy machine was not like shaking a copy machine today. They weren't durable. So, catering, hotels, travel, all that, sound, pyrotechnics. I did it.
Yeah, you did it all, my friend, and wow, did you do it? And you did it well too. That's the thing. The Crockett family, as we open this show up, what a fantastic family, man! That goes back to generation after generation. But everyone that you mentioned always had the utmost respect from the most important thing of the talent, and from the talent, the fans out there. They knew if it was a Crockett show, they were going to get their money's worth. And I go back, like I said, 50 years with you, man. And I was always proud to say that I worked for Jim Crockett Sr. and Jr. and the entire Crockett family. And I don't have anything bad to say about you guys, man, ever.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. And the thing I believe it or not, I remember wasn't South Padre. No, that's Texas. There in Florida, when you came down with Sean to take over. Do you remember that night? It was like I saw you walk in. I said, "Oh, he's got that look. He's expecting us to do something wrong." I said, "No, we're not going to do that. We're going to go out with class."
Yeah.
But but then too, I knew
that was at Panama City, wasn't it?
Yeah, Panama City. Yeah. I knew 2 years before, at least 2 to 3 years before, it was going to happen because we were killing ourselves there. Talent was. At one point, Jerry, think about it. We had $18 million worth of talent, not wrestling, because they said they were hurt. Wow. You and I both know a lot of that was BS. Yeah. Some of it, yeah. A lot of it, no. And
I had guys show up in my body shop. I said, "Aren't you working?" He said, "Man, I haven't worked in 6 months. They're paying me $350,000 to sit at home." Yep. I said, "What? How do you get one of those jobs?"
Yeah, and at one point, after all that, I said, maybe I'd like to work for Vince. but the guys that came the next day to Atlanta, to our office building, they shut all the phones off. They had the guards there to check you and what you were taking out of the building. They thought they had a meeting in the training facility of Jody Hamilton there at the building. And they basically said, none of you guys are going to get a job with us, which was a shame because there were so many young, talented people that not just this was more production people,
right?
It was a
lot of those people did end up with us, so fortunately, because they were some extremely talented people working for you guys.
Yeah.
And you put them together. You put most of them together. Hell, you're the man responsible for them, Tony Schiavone. We're not semi.
Oh me, yeah. Tony was something else. Tony. Yeah, he was doing. Matter of fact, Francis had a single A baseball team in Greensboro, and Tony was doing the announcing for the baseball team. Yeah. And so we needed another announcer, and I saw Tony and said, "Well, Francis really was pissed about that."
I remember he was doing announcing for that Class A or whatever minor league baseball team, but he also had a real low profile FM station that when the guys would go through Greensboro, he had such a good relationship. He always had like Jack and I or Roddy or somebody give him a call as we're passing through the town there, and he'd plug the shows and everything. So that's basically where he got his hookup from.
And look at him today. I am so happy for him because at one point he was working at Starbucks to make a living. After all that, so he's a tough bird.
Well, hell, my partner there worked for your brother at an ice cream soda jerk and take down to Texas to get a job wrestling. And look at him now, man.
Yeah.
I did work for your brother. For those that don't know, when your brother opened back up and brought the NWA to Texas, I worked for your brother for quite a while. He tagged me up with Dick Murdoch. I had a wonderful time. Your brother,
that's an experience. Yeah,
you
Dick
think?
Murdoch. Oh, what?
You think?
Think Dick drank a few beers? You think he drank beer?
Oh my God! I'd have to hand him beers driving down the road, and he was throwing every other one out the window. I couldn't figure out why. It's because I wasn't handing the mouth of the beer can to him. And he'd taken his throw out the window. He wouldn't let me talk. It was awesome.
Oh yeah.
Dave, that's a great thing about yours and mine and John. We've run up against so many great characters that, the outside world really wouldn't realize what kind of characters these guys are. Even though they see them on TV, man, they're so different in person, man. We're really fortunate to have the Rolodex that we had with friends.
Oh yeah. Most people wouldn't, if there were, I know people have tried to make movies about wrestling. But if you really try to make a movie about the wrestling and our characters that we've had and seen over the years, they think it was fiction. I mean, really, but
you're trying to tell some of your friends outside this business, about a typical road story. And they usually sit there, they just shake their head. Ain't no way that could happen.
They don't believe you. They literally don't believe you. They look at you can tell when you're looking at them. They don't believe what you're telling them.
Yeah.
This is actually a very mild story to what happened.
Yeah.
Well, David, we sure appreciate you coming on here June 6th on Vice TV. David Crockett, you'll find David, and I'm sure there's some great articulated stories about Magnum TA, about the life and time of Magnum TA, the tragic accident that he went through, this major superstar in our business. So tune that in. And also don't forget this weekend, we will drop on tomorrow morning for this episode here. So listen to the show. Listen to it. You're up in the Carolina area, or you got what, a pay-per-view capabilities too for this?
Pay-per-view it's gonna be on Fight TV. Pay-per-view. Yeah, the matches Saturday and Sunday. Well, for the Jim Crockett Cup.
What year Crockett Cup is this?
Oh, now you're asking me.
Anyway, the Crockett Cup on Fight TV. If you're in the Carolina area, get up to Winston-Salem, one of the greatest places in the entire land for professional wrestling, one of the hotbeds that go back years and years and years, even before my time there. So check it out and drop by and say, David, hello. And I think, David, I'm going to see you somewhere down the road at the gathering or something like that coming up in Charlotte.
I'd love to. Yes.
You got to buy me a beer.
I definitely do. I'll definitely do that. All right, Jerry. John, it's good to see you guys. Good to talk with you.